Okay, very quickly. What is The Bridge? So The Bridge is a 12-page school newspaper, or 8-page if you're reading the first edition. It's written by pupils and for pupils. It's termly and it's free. It covers a broad range of in-school stories, as well as some stories that are relevant to the local community. And it's created by a team of about 20 people, which amounts to about 5% of our entire school. We meet once or twice a week, depending on how close we are to the deadline. And it's run largely by sort of a nucleus of 4 or 5 more able and talented pupils who kind of facilitate things. Designed in-house on Quark software, printed by some local printers who do those papers, and we have a run of about 500 every term. 360 go to our pupils, the rest go to friends and governors and that kind of thing. Very quickly, it all started as a conversation in a year 8 English class when they were doing a newspaper article on the Lady of Shalott, and I hated it, and that's my fault. And I said, why can't we do this sort of for a more sort of pertinent reason? They didn't use that word, but that's what they were getting at. And we decided in our first meeting that we were going to have kind of a few aims that we try and stick to throughout the course of us doing this newspaper. And very quickly, these are what they are. We're going to report the news stories pertinent to pupils and parents at Johnson's High School. We're going to build links within the community, improve pupils' sense of well-being, to promote the school, provide a lunchtime activity, which we had very few of, and also to try and develop skills for literacy, and that's kind of the central theme to this conversation, this presentation today. So, the power of a paper. How can a paper improve skills and literacy? The National Literacy Programme poses the question, do staff recognise the powerful motivator of real audiences in writing? I think it's a huge difference between writing for your teacher and writing for a huge audience of hundreds, if not thousands. If I ask you guys to write me now a 100-word story, tapping back into the lady's presentation from earlier, and I might give it a little red comment, and you might get a little yellow piece of paper, and I'd be the only person to read it. Don't know how hard you work. If you're writing it for 1,000 people, and potentially each one of them can give you feedback and a pat on the back, or say that was crap or whatever, sorry, then you'd be willing to work a lot harder. And this has been a huge motivating factor in getting these guys' literacy skills improved. To continue this theme of sort of motivation and pride, it's all about giving the pupils a sense of autonomy on the things that they create. Again, the Essendon Skills Framework asserts that pupils have opportunities to influence what they learn in only about half the schools that they visited. Where this is a common practice, pupils feel a greater sense of motivation and enjoy their work more. And this is what, again, one of the central points in the paper is all about. It's giving these pupils sort of a living, breathing organism of their own, of having their own sort of baby that they can sort of create and direct and govern. Too often in school, they are prescribed things. Every lesson they sort of do this, do that, this is the task you need to do. The paper is all run completely by them. They direct where it goes, they decide what stories get put in it, they decide how it looks. Everything is done by them. And again, that is a huge motivating factor in these guys putting pen to paper and wanting to write. So if we're going to improve literacy, and I have to probably skim through this, how will we improve literacy? What sort of targets are we kind of hitting in doing this paper? So literacy guidance provides a number of considerations that teachers should make when teaching writing. And I truly believe that The Bridge hits nearly all of these. On the left-hand side of this table, we've got sort of the framework aims. I don't know if my little doodads work. Anyway, I won't go bore you with all of them, but on the right-hand side in blue, we've got examples of how our paper is hitting every single one of these in kind of an organic way. On the left-hand side, top row, for example, pupils should have opportunities to write for different purposes and in different formats. Well, that's completely true. The amount of different variety of sort of writing we have in this paper is huge. Reports, reviews, stories, opinion pieces, previews. We've got everything in there that these guys are all creating themselves. People should use ICT for composition. Well, they compose all their writing on Word documents. Advertising and screens around the school is done on PowerPoint. There's quite sophisticated desktop publishing software that they use to design everything that you see in front of you now. Let's move on. Again, if we're focusing on literacy, it shouldn't just be writing. We're also trying to target a few things, or we naturally target a few things in reading, albeit not quite. Again, on the left-hand side, we've got the framework aims telling us what we should be doing as teachers. On the right-hand side, this is what I believe we do in The Bridge. Top one, for example, there are opportunities for pupils to gain information retrieving skills. All our sort of staff, as it were, have been given scanning kind of lessons, which they can kind of cascade to new people who join the team, and they can read and collect information in a number of different ways. Again, I should probably go on. So if we're raising literacy, then we still got that thorny subject of how boys can sort of get into it, how boys can try and engage with what they're writing about. And this is a theme not just in Eston and Wales, but in the whole of Britain, as I'm sure you're all aware. In my experience, this might be a sweeping generalisation, but I'm a boy, so I can say it, they're lazy, they're a little bit disengaged with things they don't necessarily enjoy, and they need a bit of a rocket up their bums. Give these guys a subject on which they really, really are enthusiastic about, football and computer games. If you've got any boys in your school that aren't interested in one of those two, I'll be very surprised. And give them complete control of what they write. Give them an audience of 1,000, and it's amazing what motivation levels sort of change in that. Our sports team, for example, the guys who write the sports on the back of the paper, 2 boys who are hugely into football, hugely into rugby, completely disengaged in writing before this started, and now cannot get enough of writing these stories. Similarly, our games reviewers are 2 sort of computer, what's the polite word for it? I won't say nerds or geeks, but anyway, they're into computer games, and again, they really enjoyed writing about games and things like that. We try and encompass the whole school ethos more and more and more as each edition comes out. And we reiterate this in assemblies, in classrooms, on the school voice, on these sort of screens that we have around the school. And it started with about half a dozen of these year 8s. It went to 20 in the second edition. We've now got another 15 people working on it for this one that's coming out in a couple of weeks' time. That's 10% of our entire school are working on this newspaper. No one's turned away. We welcome SCN pupils. We've got plenty on the team who do jobs such as photography, illustration, factual writing and research. It's always a job, no matter how small, for someone to get involved. In fact, I think the past survey was mentioned by someone earlier on, and those who have scored low in self-esteem are now being actively encouraged to come and get involved in this project. And it's amazing to see that these people who had hugely low scores at the beginning of the year are now really starting to find a voice. A little case study, if I may. On the left-hand side, we have a girl called Jennifer, and she's cute. Jennifer came at the start of year 7 with one of the lowest scores we've ever had in the sort of the way they think about themselves in this past survey. After being directed to the bridge and being given a voice and being given some sort of autonomy and independence on what she could do in school, Jennifer really, really came out of her shell. And this is a girl who sort of scored 5% on the way she perceived herself. After kind of sort of blooming, as it were, in this project, Jennifer was invited with the school newspaper to go in and interview Mr. Ian Wynne Jones, which we did a couple of months ago. So impressed were they with Jennifer's enthusiasm for the project, she was given a little piece that went out on BBC News in Wales to talk about how she found the project. This is a girl who started with a 5% score on the way she was feeling about herself. Very, very quickly, I'm coming to the end, I promise. What else does the bridge bring? It allows the pupils to develop some sort of business acumen. There's a sponsorship team who've been liaising with local businesses, who've been hassling local businesses in order to try and get some sponsorship for us. We're actually up for an award on Monday, the National Newspaper Award, allow me to blow my trumpet for a second, for our environmental strategy, the way we sort of recycle papers, the way we redistribute the ones that we don't get rid of. There's some peer assessment that the MAP pupils do with some of the SEM pupils, so they're constantly feeding back on ways that they can improve their own writing. Develop skills, set up the skills framework, and it's provided us with all these opportunities. BBC Wales News, BBC Radio Cymru. We've had plenty of people who've been willing to help us in these projects. Conclusion, very, very quickly. What I'm here to do today is to try and encourage you guys to give it a try. This really is something that I believe every single person here can do. And while you might not be as lucky to get a professional printer to do it for you, you can do it in-house at a fairly low cost to the results that you'll end up getting back. And I promise you this involves no teacher genius, it involves no graph. This is a complete self-autonomous system, and they really do run it themselves. So once you sort of start this ball rolling, it will keep going on its own accord. And there's a lot to be said for not having put in much work, I promise you. It gives them a lot of pride and really enthuses them to get into writing. This large audience brings with it so much accountability and increased work ethic. It's accessible to both genders, it develops skills as well as literacy, and it's really brought the whole school together. Final point. And this is taken from the Natural Literacy Programme. The Welsh Government cannot raise standards of literacy alone. Its standards will only improve if there is commitment from regional school, improved consortia, local authorities, governing bodies, head teachers, yada yada yada. As long as you've got the enthusiasm originally with these kids, I promise you they will get into it, and I promise you it will have massive effects on literacy and skills in your school too. Okay, thanks very much.